Hey everyone, and welcome to Marketing Monday with the Watertown Oswego SBDC, where we go live every Monday and talk about marketing at noon Eastern Standard Time. And we're starting a new theme because it's a new month. But before we get started, I've got Erica with the SBDC. Erica, what's going on with the SBDC? What are some things that we should know about as the
Hey,
general
hey.
public?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for asking, Nicole, and thanks for doing this for us every Monday. We really appreciate it. So what's going on? Happy Monday for one thing. Even we got some cloudy skies up here now, but anyway, so hopefully we'll all have a good week. And as far as what's happening at the SBDC week, this week we have our safety series. Kurt Callahan's going to be on with us at 12 noon on Wednesday, live on Facebook. To talk about sexual harassment in the workplace. So really important things to think about with regard to your employees and your customers or clients with regard to the laws that are out there now, right? Surrounding sexual harassment, especially with training and that kind of thing for your employees. So if you need to know that information, join us this Wednesday at 12 noon with Kurt for that. And other than that, Nicole, we always like to say, and here's Liz too, that we have 4 advisors in our Watertown Oswego offices. They are here to help with any questions, marketing, business related, startup related, or if you are in business already, we're here to help, with growth strategy and, everything regarding things that existing business owners need help with too. So.
Great. And yeah, sorry I'm late, number one. And number two, I got waylaid in the hall and, it's Monday. So we can work with businesses up to 500 employees. So that's darn near everybody in our viewing area. So, give us a call. We're here for you.
Awesome. Right. And so, we've been trying to do some themes with the Marketing Mondays to sort of be able to kind of dive deep into topics and think about maybe ways to invite experts. And we have some experts coming on this month. And so we're kicking off this month. This is all about sort of what are your options with audio marketing? And, obviously we're on video right now, but, video isn't for everyone and it's certainly not the only option. And so what I wanted to do today was just lay a little bit of groundwork for some general intro audio stuff. And we're going to have some guests come in and talk about more deeply the things that we don't know a ton about. But what's Erica, I think you've had some experience with audio marketing. Can you tell us a little bit about that so we know the context of what going into things?
Yeah, sure. In getting ready for today, you talked about some things that I had not thought about at all as far as audio marketing, So for me, I think they've been a little bit more, well, I guess maybe we could already consider sort of the traditional audio, things that we think about with regard to marketing your small business, which are podcasting for sure. And I have not created a podcast, even though I think about it a lot, as I think a lot of people do, but I've been a guest on a lot of podcasts, related to franchise consulting, one thing that I do, coaching, and that kind of thing. So it can be a fantastic way to provide information, not just that are helpful to people, the content marketing, right? But to get yourself out there in a sort of way that builds trust and, and helps that way too. So along with the podcasting, I've also done some radio show as a guest. So for, 6 months or so before the pandemic, things changed after that. But I was a guest on one radio show related to small business in the area. So, and with that, I was on the show, right, to provide information and answer questions and that kind of thing. But then we also did some commercial spots while the show was going on. So there were both of those things, so people knew how to reach out to me. So it was a good combination of things that really kind of increased awareness. So
nice.
Mm-hmm.
And Liz, have you done some audio stuff in your marketing journey in business advising experience here?
We haven't officially done any podcasts. As Erica says, we keep threatening to. We keep threatening to do TikTok as well. And we haven't quite gotten there either. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I would have too much fun with TikTok. So that's maybe why people are protecting me from my own worst impulses. I've been, like Erica, I've been a guest on a couple radio shows. there's a radio show up here every Saturday morning on Ag Matters with Jay Madison, and we've been a guest on his show. But that's about it. And I think that it's so interesting when you think about the audio options, and we really, maybe we should have put had our cameras blank for see how much interest we can keep, how much we can keep people's interest, right, without video. But Erica made the comment a couple months ago that when it's just audio, you have to be so much better prepared. It's harder to fly by the seat of your pants, and that you need to have your talking points in order, because people lose interest more quickly. And I think I have since read a couple things that said that was true. So our experience has really been limited, and it took the pandemic to make us do Facebook Live. We had never done one before, and here I am scratching my face, and I'm still the worst when it comes to that kind of stuff. But so it's something that I think is a throwback. And I don't know if anybody read the paper this morning, or the virtual paper, that is. Huffington Post had a big article about the 90s are back, and I thought, wow, we're already nostalgic for the 90s. And so, this is really for small businesses an opportunity to give people a different take on you and your business. So I think it's pretty cool that we're doing this all month long.
All month long. And, I guess I've always thought this, I remember kind of the early days of the internet where there was chat rooms and stuff, and we had handles and stuff, and we were kind of more anonymous. And then Facebook came on the scene, and suddenly our name is associated with everything. Suddenly it's a pandemic and we're on video calls all day. And I think there's just this I think there's people kind of stepping back into that more, it's not anonymous, but it's just a little bit more private internet space. So, and I think audio kind of allows for that. So I want to throw up a few stats that I thought were interesting as I was getting prepared for this broadcast. And I'll just give my background super briefly about audio stuff. Because I'm not an expert in audio stuff, I appreciate that Liz and Erica are letting some experts come on later this month to give us some more deep knowledge, because my knowledge is limited. I had a podcast for a year and a half weekly with interviews, and it was before this is 7 years ago. And so I would have people come into my office, we would record it, I would edit it, and I would upload it. And it was so I used to live on an island called Mount Desert Island. So this podcast was called My Desert Island. And so we would interview we interviewed a lobsterman. We interviewed the official state drink of Maine is coffee brandy. So we interviewed an expert in coffee brandy as to why that happened. It was just it was real. People loved it, and it was great. But the problem was, especially if it involved multiple other people. So we did a love episode, which ended up being like a 2-part series where we interviewed couples that were that had lived on the island, and there were different kinds of couples, right? And what we had is we had one microphone in the middle of the table. Now, one of the interviews I remember, the loudest man you have ever heard in your life was married to the quietest woman you have ever met in your life. And I spent at least 5 hours, because whenever he would talk, I'd have to bring the volume down. And then in the editing process, right? And then whenever she talked, I would bring the volume up, because I didn't have everyone separately mic'd, because we couldn't afford it. And I'm sure stuff has gotten less expensive now. This was 7 years ago. Stuff has changed. And what happened was, so I would spend hours editing these very specific podcasts that applied to a pretty small group of people. And I'll get into why we had a hard time finding advertisers, which I'll get into a little bit later in this broadcast. So it was one of those things where it was like, okay, I can spend 12 hours a week on this hobby if I want to, but you know, I can't do this forever. So I ended up kind of letting it go. Me and my co-host kind of let it go. I let the website domain go. I sometimes think about reviving it. I do have all the edited episodes in my files still, but and then I realized that, I really should get back into audio. I like the idea. And when Clubhouse, which is an app, and we'll talk about that in a second, first came out, I would get in there and there'd be 100 people in the room talking. And
what is Clubhouse, by the way?
Oh, well, we'll get into that. But it's this app where you listen in on people, you can join conversations with large groups of people. And I remember thinking, because the thing with video is I have verbal cues. Like I can tell, like if one of you wants to say something, I see the look on your face and I can kind of pause and let you say something. But if you don't have those visual cues, it's really hard to figure out when you're supposed to talk. So I found this other app that basically is social podcasting. And I thought, you know what? It was a startup. And I started listening to it, like 6-ish months. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to set up a series on this, on Solve, for the month of May. And it's funny that you guys picked audio for May because I completely forgot I did this. So I am doing a podcast every single day for the month of May, starting today. Oh, yeah. Someone just says Liz knows I'm a clubhouser.
Hi, Renee.
This is Renee. Nice. Okay.
Renee's our number one fan. And I'm a clubhouser too, thanks to Renee, who got me the double secret formation invitation.
Oh, we just got a little heart from, I believe, Renee or somebody who's watching. So anyway, so point being is that I have I did podcasting. It broke my heart a little bit, but now I'm trying to get back in the game because I do think it's a really interesting format. So just a couple things throughout there, because the pandemic did change a lot of things, is that, and we think of Gen Z as being really young, but they're kind of, I'm a millennial and I'm in my 40s. So Gen Z is not super young.
26 and down. Allegedly.
Well, no, but I think there's I don't know what the younger one is.
My daughter.
There's a younger generation. I guess what I'm saying is when we think of Gen Z, I think everyone thinks like 15-year-olds, but they were 15-year-olds, but now they're not. We were all getting older, right? But
I think my daughter, who's 24, is Gen Z, and my 26-year-old is a millennial. I think.
There you go.
I think they're split up that way. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So 80% of Gen Zers are streaming digital audio, and so there is this interest in audio as a content because there's certain times that you can't really watch a video. Now, granted, some people probably listen to this, right? Maybe as they're doing other things, right? But, if you're walking or driving, it's really hard to watch something that is visual because you kind of need to see where you're going. So the audio format is really a lot flexible in a lot of locations. So we also, during the pandemic, or podcast listening has grown 200%. I know when I had my podcast 7 years ago, my co-host said she'd be at a party and people would be like, what's a podcast? And she'd take their phone and she'd put it on their phone for them because they didn't know how to do it, but now I feel like over time, podcast has been this slow burn. They've been around for years, right? I've been listening to podcasts for probably 15 years, but it's slowly going, people are slowly, have been adopting it more and more over time, but it's grown a lot in the last little while.
And I think you're right that as far as one channel is concerned, I think it's very multi-generational. It seems like I know my daughters listen to podcasts.
Right.
Yeah. And so do I.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny because on TikTok, I will watch and I see people upload a video of themselves. They'll upload a little snippet of them filming a podcast or filming a radio show. And it makes you kind of be like, oh, I wonder what the rest of this is. And you go listen to it. Right. So there is this way that people are using sort of social media to sort of give people a little snippet and then drive people to listen to the rest of the episode. Just like you see a little snippet of a video and then, go here to finish it. Right. Because the reality is, especially post-pandemic, is Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And being on video isn't for everyone. And I think for a lot of people who are just getting into this whole, okay, I want to have my authentic voice online, thinking about what you're saying and thinking about what you're looking like saying it is a whole thing. And I know with me, it's funny, when I started my live streams, people would just comment on whether they liked my hair and my lipstick, or people just would be like, oh, I like your hair today. And it's that's not what I'm talking about, but welcome to being a woman on the internet. Right. But I think something about the audio format is it's personal. You're hearing someone's voice, but it kind of takes away some of that sort of visual and performative stuff that you have to do when people are watching you. So,
for sure.
And then the other thing, which, is just kind of ongoing jokes, is that we're asking our device questions, and I'm not going to say it, but we're saying, hey, name of device, tell me something. Because a lot of, I was telling Eric and I were talking a little bit before we started. I was talking about, I think Jimmy Kimmel made a joke and said, hey, the S1, or order this. And a bunch of people, because they had their speakers in the room and were listening to it, you know what I mean? It triggered
got an Amazon delivery that 2 days later.
Exactly. So, but we're
Crazy.
we're asking our devices, the voice search is something that businesses kind of want to get into, and I experimented before this. I have a Google device in my kitchen, and I asked, hey G word, what are my local salons? And it said, I found here are your local beauty salons to you. But I could have asked it, where are beauty salons that take appointments online or whatever. So, not only are we consuming audio, but we're also kind of interacting with things in an audio way that we weren't before. So,
well, let me just say one thing
yeah,
about
absolutely.
Nicole, and that if you're of a certain age, boomer, we used to listen to comedy albums, like George Carlin, right?
I have the George Carlin record, The 7 Words You Can't Say on Television.
Yes.
It's sitting right on my shelf right here.
Yes. And so I think that Alan Sherman was another one who's less known but has some really hysterical stuff. So there, my parents had albums, Joan Rivers, Phyllis Diller, like all these people who are older than my folks. And so there was a lot of people were primed to listen only. It wasn't just for music, it was also for words. So I think as humans, we're wired that way. And certainly another thing that I read is that with the advent of in the before times when people went to the gym, they watched TVs. Then they started working out at home or walking or running, and they got used to listening to podcasts while they work out. And I wish I could remember where I saw it. It was somewhere like USA Today, something I don't usually look at, that said, more people going back to the gyms now, they're less interested in the televisions, and they were positing, is it because of, if you have a certain news station on that says one thing, if you have another news station on that says another thing about the gym ownership's politics, or is it really that people just got used to wearing earbuds and listening only when they were working out? So there's a bunch of theories out there.
That's so interesting. No, and it kind of makes sense. And so, kind of as I was preparing for this topic, and like I said, I tried this, but I think I tried it in some ways a little bit too early. But why is audio as a format taking off? And like now, because there's been these other times where it could have taken off. And so so that's a good theory, is that during the pandemic, we got used to listening to things because, yeah, in the gym, you have perfectly positioned televisions, and maybe at home you can only work out like in your basement or something, and you don't have TV down there. But the other things I was thinking about, and so all these things have gotten better, which is that, podcasts for a while, like I said, were hard. I told you about my co-host kind of downloading it on people's devices, but now like people increasingly understand how to get them, how to listen. I remember we pulled our stats, and this is 7 years ago, but 70% of our audience listened to in browser. So that means they were in Google Chrome or Safari or whatever. And they went to the website and they pressed play. They didn't download it onto their device, which is how it counted our stats. So as we were approaching advertisers, it was really hard to say this is because, this is how many people are listening. Because if you think about it, think about the radio shows you listen to, whether you listen to a radio station or you listen to a podcast, they always have, they always had the listener survey. They're like, go take our listener survey. It's because they don't know anything about you. The only thing I knew was downloads per episode and what country people were in. I didn't have any demographic information. I didn't have any interest information. So trying to approach advertisers was a nightmare. Right. And I think stats now are getting better. We're starting to know more. But also, the main thing with podcasts or any audio format is there's no real easy way to share it on social media. So if you're listening to a podcast, let's say you're listening to an hour-long podcast, and there's this one point at the 42-minute mark, and you're like, oh, this is great. If you wanted to share that on your favorite social media platform, how would you do it, right? And now they're starting to come up with ways to do this. And I'm sure when we have our podcast guest on, he'll talk more about what those options are. But my only choice, like for a long time, was, hey, here's this hour-long link to an hour-long episode. I'd have to save the link. I'd have to open the browser. I'd have to, paste in the link, and then I'd just say, go to the 42-minute mark and listen to, you know what I mean? There wasn't an easy way to splice a little section of it. And when you look at social media, your sharing options, you can upload a photo, you can upload a video, you can write text. There isn't an audio option. You can't like upload an audio file. So that's why a lot of people, you'll notice with podcasts, they'll upload on YouTube, they'll like put a still image of them and they'll put the audio and upload it as a video so that it's a little bit more shareable. So
Right, so it's not easy to stream a podcast, right?
well, I mean, you can listen
You
to it.
can, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're for yourself. I'm just saying that, like, let's say I wanted to share a clip with you guys, right?
Right.
Like, there's not. How would I? Okay, so if I wanted to share a 5-minute section of a podcast with you both, and I could,
Right.
like, do I chop it up and email it to you? How do I chop it up? Do I just tell you where to fast forward to and hope that you can do that? Like, so I think though that these problems are being overcome now, and like I said, with the pandemic being obviously the final the tipping point for a lot of things, but for audio saying like, hey, this is a good format, this is a viable format, and we can use it. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the different formats, right? Just very brief overview, because we do have some special guests coming on to talk about these.
Right.
So I don't want to take any, I don't know a lot about them, but I also don't want to take anything away from it. And then I want to show a couple of interesting examples that I found that I thought you guys would get a kick out of. So obviously the first sort of audio format that a lot of us are familiar with is podcasting. So podcasting, it's an audio file. And as somebody, what you do is you record it, you edit it, volume up, volume down. You can, I mean, we would do these interviews and they'd be 2.5 hours. I'm like, no one wants to listen to a 2.5 hour interview. Our job as the person who's presenting the information is to curate it, right? We have to do some listening for our listeners and find the best parts, right? And then what we do is we put that audio file on a website. And that from that website, it gets distributed. It goes to, iTunes, it goes to Stitcher, it goes to iHeartRadio, it goes to all the different places where people listen. Because there's a lot of different podcast apps where people could listen to podcasts. So your option, right? You upload the audio file to a website. So either I can go to that website and listen directly, or I can have a podcasting app on my device and I can just, download or stream it and listen to it that way. And so, there were for a while, I think people tried video podcasts. There was video podcast I'm not sure. It's one of those things where like the whole podcasting format, like people were like, well, the whole point of it is on its audio. So I think those had a harder time taking off or sort of took on a different format. But yeah, so I listen to, I probably subscribe to, 50-ish podcasts, and I don't listen to all of the episodes. Sometimes I'll look at the title of the episode and decide if I'm going to listen to it or not. Like, if I'm subscribing to Planet Money, they did a whole thing about co-working spaces. Oh, that's interesting to me. They did a whole other episode about, perfume manufacturing. Maybe that's less interesting to me. So the thing with podcasting is you can subscribe. The episodes are delivered into that format, and you can decide which ones to listen to or not. Or like I said, if someone is just very not into downloading stuff, you can just send them to the website and they can listen there, as 70% of my people apparently elected to do. So a lot of businesses have podcasts. It's a way for people to get to know you. They're listening to you. They're listening to you talk to other people. They're listening to you present about, your subject matter expertise. And they might say, oh, I listen to one of the things I wanted to be, I don't know, maybe when I retire, I'll do stuff like this, but I love like organizing stuff. I don't like organizing my stuff. I like organizing other people's stuff. So I'll listen to an organization podcast. So let's say I listen to this organization podcast for a while and I think, oh, this woman's really great. She seems to really know. I'm going to hire her to organize. And during the pandemic, of course, we all figured out how to work remotely. So I could just probably set up a camera and show her my setup, and she could tell me how to set up the room without even physically being here. So I think that's the other thing too, is that people got used to working remotely. And so this has opened up the potential customers, right? For these kinds of businesses. So, if I'm a, expert on organizing, I might have an organization podcast, or, if I'm, I don't know, do you guys have podcasts that you listen to from small businesses that you can think of? You don't have to name specific people, just like a type of pod. You're like, oh yeah, this kind of business has a podcast. It's really interesting.
Yeah, let me think about that.
Yeah.
Because I don't, yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't. I listen to a couple of things. My 23-year-old has suggested. Small Town Murderer, I think, is one of them. But I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I am honestly, when I'm not, I'm more about music.
Yeah.
But I do think, thinking about like how, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I'm a small business owner. I'm not, not Planet Money. Is it Planet Money, the one you were just talking about? Yeah. I'm not a national company, right?
You don't need to be.
You don't need to be, right? That's the thing. So think about it. Artists, storytellers, obviously that's an obvious. I mean, Nicole, coming from Maine, you must be a Bert and I fan. So they were some of the, going back like George Carlin, they did podcasts, but on records. But if I'm a restaurateur and I really think I need to find a way to connect with people, well, what about a recipe podcast? Okay, this recipe I got from my grandmother, and this one I learned when I went to cooking school, right? Or a retailer, and you're doing something once a week and you talk about your suppliers. Oh, we have this jewelry manufacturer in India, and it's a co-op of women, and they do blah. So don't just think of, what am I going to talk about? I can't talk about today's specials on a podcast. No, you can't. But think about telling the story of how you got to today's special recipe, or the special this evening, or the sauce, or the barbecue sauce, or whatever. So think about origin stories, right? I think that's the term.
Right. Yeah.
How did your business start? How did you start with that supplier? Why do you sell? How did you meet that guy who makes the fancy pepper mills? Think outside the box of, if it's interesting to you, it'll be interesting to other people. And this is a low stakes game. Well, okay, you already own one of these, and you already own a microphone because there's one built in. So it doesn't cost you a lot of money. You don't have to rent studio space. You don't have to, have your hair done or whatever, right? And so it's low cost, low stakes.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts too about just thanks, Liz, for giving me a minute. but I actually, as far as small business owners or people who have a product or service to offer, right, who are using podcasting to do so, I actually just was a guest on a podcast with a woman out of Buffalo who she's an HR professional, but and she's and she does this, more on the consulting side of things now, but she's interviewing others from, about small business and that kind of thing. And I'm sure she's had her listeners who are also her clients, so that's one example, HR consulting, and then she's offering all kinds of professional subject matter expert advice, interviewing others on her podcast. So the other thing is what that I notice a lot is that a lot of people who have written books do podcasting, right? So they're probably interviewing other people who have written books too to help them promote their stuff out there too. So I notice that a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so then if I'm a bookstore retailer, right, then maybe I figure out which of the authors do good podcasts, and I talk about those podcasts. Again, this is not just about how to do one, but how to effectively use the whole universe of podcasting to help move your business forward. So, or if you are a bookstore owner, or if you're a tennis, sneaker store owner, post some reviews. Think about what your questions your customers ask you and what things you tell to your customers that they don't even know to ask. Those are your topics. At least initially.
Right. Yeah. And if, the thing is, I mean, it's funny because when we run our businesses, right, we just think, oh, that's normal or whatever, but other people think it's interesting. But, if you don't feel like you're the kind of person who can come up with stuff, you can also pull together some information. So I'm just going to share a comment that I saw Renee post about Social Pros podcast by Convince and Convert. So I'm sure, like, so these podcasters who talk about social media, I'm sure they're pulling kind of data from different social media sites and they're talking about it. So that's something you can do as well. And if you want, like I started doing on my YouTube channel, which I'm thinking of exporting these as podcasts because a lot of them are audio, is reaction to online marketing gurus and their trainings that they post, which are ridiculous. So I'm just kind of snarking on their trainings and people love it. You know what I mean? So if you know, there's all these different kinds of formats out there, and we're going to have a podcasting expert come on. But all you need to know is that if you tried to do this, like I said, I did this 7 years ago. I spent 5 hours on volume control on one interview. Now you can record things over Zoom, and what it'll do is it'll record a separate audio track. So like, for example, with you guys, if we're recording this, and I don't even know if it's over Zoom, it just might be, there's these tools now where it'll record an audio file from my end, an audio file from Erica's end, an audio file from Liz's end, so that, and what I can do is lay them all over each other. And so when Liz is talking, I can be like, all right, we're going to hear Liz's, because obviously that's going to be the clearest sound for everybody because her microphone is in the room with her. So there's even these things now where like you upload the file, it transcribes it, and when you delete words, it deletes it in the audio file.
Wow.
So you don't need, so like, it's never like, it has gotten so much easier than it used to be. So just stay tuned for that broadcast. I forget, I don't know if that's the one that's on the 16th.
On the 16th.
Oh yeah. So
yeah.
Anyway, so we'll be getting into that kind of stuff in that one.
Yeah,
so
and Zach Miller is also going to be talking about some new and different things that we'd not heard about before too. That even the SBDC might be starting to do, like audiograms. So we've got some cool information coming up with him.
So he's a professional podcast producer and he edits other people's podcasts. So he'll have some good tools and ideas for us in that one. But just kind of like if you're in your podcasting app looking to things to listen to, just kind of poke around by subject matter and see if like there's businesses like yours who might have a podcast. And if not, it might be an interesting opportunity. So a second format, which probably most of us are familiar with, is radio. So radio is we have physical radio stations that are broadcasting, right? We can listen to from our car without anything connected. We have online radio stations. And there is lots of possibilities with radio. And we have a radio expert coming on a different broadcast for this
on the
month.
23rd. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Right.
So, and I honestly know nothing about this. So I don't know what you guys know about radio. I just know it exists and that there's different formats.
Yeah, I told you a little bit about my experience with it. And I think a lot of people have this perception that radio is dead. And it's not. I actually was just talking to Steve, who's going to be on with us on the 23rd. I think he'll shed some light about the fact that their listenership is way up these days. So I think it's an interesting marketing option that that people should think about. So.
Yeah. And I mean, you want to diversify your marketing generally. And like I said, I definitely have a lot of questions. So I'm looking forward to talking about like how these different things work. Cause there's, Erica had a radio show. You can also underwrite a show. Like there's different parts of sort of being a part of the radio universe without you starting your own radio station. That you can take advantage of as a business, Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't have a radio show. I was a guest on a radio show.
I'm sorry.
It was ongoing. I was there. I was a frequent guest.
Oh, I see. Got it. I thought it was okay. Did not mean to misattribute that.
No, that's good.
And there was one in Watertown also. Kylie Peck, our friend and the former president and CEO of the Greater Watertown Chamber. In the again in the before times, there was a weekly show called Taking Care of Business on a Watertown-based radio station that they did a small business segment. So hopefully some of that stuff will start to come back. Those are some of the first things that we stopped doing because no one could travel to a radio station, to a broadcast studio, huddled around the one microphone. But hopefully some of that will start to come back.
But I recorded some of their radio shows. We recorded them, and I was at home during the pandemic too, and I was still doing it. So so there are options that way, even still with radio. So
right, we've all broadened our skill set, that's for sure. So
yeah. And all of these different kinds of businesses have gotten used to working with remote people and stuff like that during the pandemic. So I think it's a really good opportunity to be a part of things. Now, the thing that I think we're least familiar with, maybe as a group, as this social audio stuff. So basically, Clubhouse is an app. I'm sharing my computer screen, so what it's going to do is say like, there's a get it in the app store or whatever. But I just kind of want to show you, and obviously this is like a fake screenshot. What it looks like is you have these list of rooms by topics. And so when I enter that room, I see that there is the people kind of on the top are the people who are in the panel, right? They're the people who have been pulled, I think they call it, onto the stage, right? And so we can see when people are talking. And so in this case, Carl is talking. He has a sort of gray circle and it kind of pulses around Carl. So we know that when someone's speaking, you're like, who's talking? That's how we know who's talking. And at different points, like if there's other people in the room, they could be pulled on, you can raise your hand to get pulled on stage kind of thing. And it just allows you to kind of listen in. And in the early days of Clubhouse, a lot of people were on it, like a lot of like celebrities and stuff. So like you could like be in a room of 100 people and suddenly like whatever, Gary V or whatever comes in the room, and it was just this like very interesting, dynamic that's going on there. So I'm excited that Renee is into Clubhouse. I should have asked her to maybe either pre-record something or whatever. I personally think it's a little chaotic for me. And I don't know if it's just because sometimes I have a hard time hearing things. So if I have good headphones on and I can hear it, I'm okay. But if like people are interrupting each other a lot and stuff, a lot of crosstalk, I have a hard time following that. But, and I think if the room is small enough and the person who is in charge of the room is really good about saying, okay, thanks, Edwin. We've heard a lot from you. I want to hear from Carolyn now. I think if there's like somebody who's facilitating it, I think it can be really good. And that's Clubhouse. It's available now both on Apple devices and non-Apple devices. So you can, it's like I said, it's an app. So it's this landing page is just kind of showing us basically to download the app and how the app generally works. So, but the other one out there, which I'm doing, is called Solve. And this is a social podcasting app. So as you see at 3:00 today, I am doing a podcast about how do businesses use Facebook in 2022. So I'm the person who is facilitating, and then these two people are my panelists, Debbie and Maurice. And so the format is that we each get a certain amount of time to introduce ourselves, and it switches over. So like, okay, and then I ask Debbie a question, and then I ask a question. Debbie has a minute to answer, and then Maurice has a minute to answer. It's a 15-minute format, but it's very much a panel format. And it gives everyone kind of a chance to talk. So, so these are recorded, so you can listen to them afterward. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But both of these, the thing with these, podcasting or platforms is you're downloading it and listening to it, right? There's not really you're not interacting with the hosts at all. You're not posting questions. And with this, it's like, okay, this is an audio format that allows you to participate. Yeah, a great moderator is key. And I think, honestly, Renee, I've just been in rooms where the moderator just either where it doesn't happen. So, so just, if you're just kind of curious about this, you don't have to start your own Solve series. Like I said, I'm a marketing person, so I'm supposed to get into everything. But, and I thought, I've been on a couple as a guest, right? So you can go and you can just listen to them and kind of see if this is your sort of thing. But if you're a business, you could have a presence on these platforms and be hosting discussions and talking to your potential customers very directly in real time. And I'm just like kind of keeping an eye because I want time for my two little things that I thought were cool. So the other thing too, right, in audio is the whole voice search thing, asking, hey, insert name of device. You can ask them questions. And as a local business, you might be saying, well, how can I come up? And what you want to do is you want to fill out, like we did a Google My Business broadcast. You can have an Apple business listing. You can have a Yelp business listing. So basically find these different places where you can have a free business listing and fill them out as completely as possible. By the way, PSA, I haven't checked into this myself. I just heard a podcast about it. Google My Business has launched some new categories, and now you can choose up to 10 categories for your business instead of 5. So feel free, like I said, go in there and fill it out. And that way, if someone is voice, if I ask my kitchen device, hey G, what are my local salons, and you have listed in your Google business listing that you're a salon and you're physically near me, you're likely to come up in voice search. So, but that's something, increasingly interesting to people, is this like coming up in voice search, because people are using it more and more. Or when someone says, hey, whatever, add this product to my cart, you want them to ask for your product in the right way. So one thing with my Google thing that drives me crazy is that, like, if I want to listen to Trevor Noah on YouTube, like, if I say, I have to say the exact right channel name for it to find the channel on YouTube, or else it goes and finds like Trevor Noah clips from other places. I just want to hear the show. So the voice search thing, having people ask for the right thing, right? You're likely to come up, but just kind of putting out there that that's a thing that we now care about. And then my final thing, which I thought was interesting, is, there's these ability to make playlists now, right, on things like Spotify. And we've heard of kind of jokey cultural references where, like, this guy will make a playlist and then he'll send it to multiple women or something. But brands are starting to get into playlists. And, so like Kentucky Fried Chicken has a Spotify playlist called Bucket Bangers about hip hop tracks that go with its chicken, apparently. Victoria's Secret has a Rock in the Runway playlist. So you have these different brands who have went ahead and curated these playlists. And it's funny because I was on YouTube the other day and I was like, oh, I made an immaculate invoicing vibes playlist on my company channel. So that, like, music that's high energy, but not so high energy that you run to, but high energy so that when you're like sending invoices and whatever, like you're kind of bopping in the background. So I'm hoping that I get some followers there for people like finding that playlist, thinking it's hilarious, and then subscribing to my channel to see what else I add there. Currently, there's only 3 songs. So if any of you have a good immaculate invoicing song, please tell me. I'll add it to the channel. Oh, and Mike asked, do you have to pay royalties for the song? Well, here's the thing. It's because it's in YouTube or because it's in Spotify. It's not like I'm taking a copy of it and putting it on my thing. I'm using YouTube and I'm using their official YouTube video. So they're getting the traffic. So if I would just lift it and put it in my podcast, like, that would be wrong. But since I am on Spotify using Spotify Music, or I am on YouTube using YouTube Music to make the playlist, we're all set on the royalties or attributions, because we're linking to the original source. So there's some really like fun ones out there. And as a company, maybe you get a lot of compliments when people come in your store. They say, oh, I like it. You can make a playlist of like these are the songs we play in our store, kind of thing.
I think it's a great idea.
Fun way to connect with people.
It is a great idea.
Yeah.
And I think restaurants could really, create really fun playlists. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And
even like, what are the top 5 songs played on our jukebox?
Right.
And you can even have fun with it after midnight, before 9 p.m. Like, you can really have some fun with that. It's funny you say that. Years ago at TJ Maxx, I think, I picked up a CD from Williams-Sonoma. It was Music to Barbecue By. Okay, because I knew one song on it. And this is probably 15 years ago, so it's kind of pre-Spotify-ish and whatever. And I was like, oh, I know this song. It's one of the CDs that I reach for the most often, because it's like all different artists. And one, I'm not really sure, like, one of the songs that I can recall is Walking the Tightrope by Stevie Ray Vaughan. I'm not sure what that has to do with barbecue, but there's another one called Smoking Hot by somebody, I don't know. And anyway, it was just.
But you trust Williams-Sonoma, and you liked one of the songs, so you're like, so it can give
people. It was $5, right? Yeah.
Right. So. Well, and it's a way to, like, rather. Because, like, Starbucks, Williams-Sonoma, all these people probably had to license these songs to burn them on CDs, right? We're just making a playlist and linking to the original source so that they're still getting the Spotify money or the YouTube money, and kind of people are just kind of seeing what your taste is as a company,
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to play a couple of things that I thought were interesting. But before I do that, I was like reading articles about this, right? I wanted to like make sure that I was up to date on my information. So kind of what we can expect from audio is this idea of increasing diversity. So for example, TikTok launched, it has these voices that will read text for you. So, it's like an AI voice. And so I think there's like 6 or 7 of them now with different accents from different places, right? So you have an Australian woman, you have a British man, you have so you have these different kind of people who will make good AI things. Also, there's a website that you can make, because these famous people, right? There's a lot of audio clips of them talking. So it's made this like, you can make Drake say something, or you can make Kim Kardashian say, like, it's her voice that's been sampled to death. You type in the words and you can hear what it sounds like and use it in your videos to be funny potentially. So I think we're going to hear more different kinds of voices now that audio is more accessible. We don't need a fancy microphone. Not that this is fancy, but we don't need a microphone in a studio anymore. We can put our voices on the internet. So we're going to hear from more people, which I think is great. This idea of immersive audio, which I'm going to show you an example of in a second. And we're going to hear more synthetic voices, I think, more different kinds of synthetic voices of people reading stuff. So the closeout, I wanted to talk a little bit about 2 of these things, which I thought were super cool. One of them is if you think about it, when you're doing Legos, right? You're playing with Legos with your hands. And what they did is they basically made a soundscape so that if someone was playing with their Legos, they could hear what it sounded like. So I'm just going to hold on. I had to stop the share because I have to share the screen differently when I share sound. So let me do that. Share. Okay. So hopefully we can hear this. If you can hear this, just go like this.
Lego now has a voice. Introducing Lego Play Waves.
Welcome to the Space Academy.
There's a pride of hungry lions coming our way.
This is it, driver. The final lap.
Go on fun, immersive missions. Just ask Google to talk to Lego Play Waves.
So it tells you exactly how to get started, which I thought was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Integrated marketing.
Yeah, really cool.
Really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh. See, this is what you have to be careful of with audio, folks. Dead air, right? If you go to a radio station and you hear nothing, and then you're going to keep moving on. But while Nicole regains her voice, I just want to say one quick thing about radio we didn't really touch on is underwriting, and that's public radio stations. And there's some opportunities there, but you have to understand your market. Just like in buying commercial radio time or TV time or newspaper time or anything, you have to understand your market. So we'll be talking more about that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Liz.
How you doing,
guys? All right, I'm good.
We're a team.
Yeah.
Thanks. I so appreciate that. So this other thing it was a project and it's not like a for-profit thing, but I just thought this was really cool. So they started this series called Radio Recliner, and basically they gave senior citizens an ability to host their own radio show from their room at their retirement facility during COVID, which I thought was really cool. Anyway, so this is a really brief clip, but I just thought this was such a cool use of audio. So just go like this again if you can hear.
So many seniors have been isolated in this pandemic and unable to have visitors.
If you don't want the roof blown off, don't turn your volume up, because Pink Floyd can take it off.
Pirate radio run by retirees. Radio Recliner.
That's right, Radio Recliner.
The new online streaming radio station.
With retirees as DJs.
Coming to you from room 3325. This is Karaoke Cowboy.
I'm DJ Legal.
Hattie with a attitude. Now my DJ name, Boomski.
And here is Happy by Farrell Williams.
Stairway to Heaven.
Peggy Sue, when my husband sang that to me, he would just make my heart melt.
I'd like to dedicate the song to the doctors, nurses,
To my daughters, Amy and Terry, and the best grandchildren ever.
As soon as I heard his voice, I burst into tears.
This show helps him stay social.
Hey, I'd like to dedicate the song to my mom.
Hi, Granny. We love you.
Hi. I want to send a very special shout out to all the DJs in the Radio Recliner program.
Don't let this virus get you down.
The sun comes up every morning.
I feel that I have something to offer. I feel empowered.
They are reaching the beaches and rocking the docks.
An injection of hope that we all need these days.
Oh my gosh, this just makes me want to cry.
Music makes a difference.
I want to be a radio recliner.
This is Miss Fancy Pants. Thank you for listening, and I enjoyed the time with you.
Wow. I can't believe I've never heard of that. I mean, what a great find, Nicole. That's awesome.
I know. I thought that it was really neat. And I know it's not like, but if you think about it, geez, if you run a retirement home, you know, what a nice service that you could be offering. And, you know, unlike video, we don't have to set up, you know, the video camera. You don't have to work, you know, with streaming video, I'm plugged in here because I'm hosting the connection. So I have to have, you know, good enough internet speeds. I have to have, you know, there's a lot of things that have to happen for a video stream, but an audio is a little bit, it takes away some of those complications. So,
very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a fun format, you know, in particular for, and I don't know if you heard too, there's this, I don't know, grade school classroom, and they recorded hopeful messages, and they made a Google Voice number. So you can call the Google Voice number and you'll get a random message from one of the kids about, you know, about like keeping your head up or whatever. And the thing is, like, it's personal, but also we're not putting kind of video of children online. Like there's a little bit of separation, which is helpful if you're a certain kind of person or dealing with a certain population.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, so audio is really an interesting format. Maybe one of these kind of speaks to you as a format you know you can look into. And as you guys kind of commented, you know, with things like this, it's not like you have to say, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast. You can go on as a guest on a podcast. You know, there's ways that you can sort of dip your toe in the water. You know, I'm going to host, you know, a little solve thing, or I'm going to just host one room. Like, so just don't feel like you have to like go whole hog full into this. I'm doing this for a month because I'm doing it as an experiment for my marketing company. But if you don't run a marketing company, like, you don't have to like look into all this stuff, but you know, you can kind of dip your toe in and see which things work for you.
Yeah. So. It's just simple researching to think about, you know, discover who's podcasting about what out there, and maybe picking your top 3 and reaching out, you know, and seeing if it makes sense for you to be a guest on, you know, is a great way to start. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, we're always looking for, and as a podcast host who did an interview style podcast, it was always like looking for guests. And, you know, so if you record them, it's nice. They appreciate it.
Yeah. It's making their life easier in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have,
relevant. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you have questions or you have things you want to know about audio marketing, drop us a line at spdc.sunyjefferson.edu and we can answer that, or put something in the chat on Facebook or YouTube, because we're here all month talking about audio marketing. So yeah.
So we wanted to kind of give everyone a sort of broad sampling of what's available. we'll look into with our guests like some sort of small business implications and get into kind of some more tactical stuff in later episodes. But I thought like it was kind of interesting to give a sort of broad overview of kind of what's out there and what people are doing generally with this first one to just kind of get us excited. So do you guys have anything you want to say before we close out the broadcast today? It's okay if you don't.
I love radio recliners. I mean, that practically made me tear up. Just
I know.
Right? I mean, so, you know, and I loved the 0 marketing budget, 6 million and earned. Like, think about that proportion. So, and if you think that there's nothing people want to hear about my business that's interesting, think about factory tours, right? I mean, you know, it's not just about the free Busch beer at Busch Gardens anymore, right? There's factory tours also. So people want to hear why you make that tartar sauce the way you make it. They want to hear that it's the pickle recipe that your mother got from the German lady up the street, right? These are things that people find interesting and will make your business stand out.
Right. Yeah. So if video doesn't speak to you as a format, but you like the personal connection that voice can offer, and you want to involve other people, because let me tell you, getting other people to come on video is a little bit harder. Asking them to go on to record their voice, they're much more open to. So, and if you're one of those people, consider audio marketing and what your options are with those kind of formats. And if you do implement something, I hope you reach out to the Watertown SBDC and tell them you did so we can talk about you on a future stream.
Yeah.
So, Erica, Liz, thanks so much for your participation and insight today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nicole.
All right. See you all next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
See you next week.